In this video, I'm going to walk you through 7 of the best Google Ads strategies that are working right now, strategies that are responsible for over $9 million in revenue at a 3.5x ROAS on average just within the last 30 days. And I can guarantee all of these strategies will work for your brand regardless of the niche or industry your brand is currently in. But starting with the first strategy, which I call the full build approach. This directly relates to the specific campaign approach you have running, ideally with a Performance Max campaign. And this brand right here is a perfect example of essentially what a full build or a full catalog approach looks like. Essentially, it's, in simple words, a Performance Max campaign which has all of the assets, all of the images, logos, videos, etc. provided only with one asset group specifically. So on a top level, the main goal of this approach, before I go into the nitty-gritty, is to keep things extremely simple, extremely straightforward, and to make it easy for the algorithm to go after these individual assets which you have provided, and at the same time go after your products. No other campaigns interfere with this full build approach. There's no other Performance Max campaigns on the side, no other shopping campaign strategies, none of that stuff. Literally one campaign approach, everything provided, all of your best imagery, all of your best videos. You want to make sure that this has prior data that lets you know that this is what's working in terms of the assets. If you don't have prior data, just provide as much high quality content as humanly possible. On the right hand side, in terms of signals, you want to go and do a deep analysis of your customer list, the persona, what kind of themes they like, what kind of interests they have, so on and so forth, and literally make a gigantic list of everything you can find, so that when you come to the search theme section, you can provide as much as possible as to what your audience actively searches for, what their interests are, so on and so forth. And then eventually Google will let you know which search themes specifically are driving incremental traffic. You can also make things a bit easier for the algorithm by providing audience signals, ideally with your retargeting audiences. But from there, it's as simple as running that one specific asset group based approach with all of your products. That's literally it. It's a full build with everything provided. And the beautiful thing about this is Google, because it's so smart, will take whatever's working, will look into its database of billions of dollars of data within your industry specifically, break down the types of products that work, the types of search keywords that work, the assets, so on and so forth, and then hone in based on what you provided on only those things. And of course, from there, it's all up to you based on using the incoming data to make things more optimized, to make things scale based on what's working and getting rid of what isn't working. But there's 3 situations where this approach works the best. Number 1 situation is when you have little to no experience with Google. Maybe you're just not transitioning into the Google Ads world, wanting to kind of kick things off and see how things go. Number 2 situation is you want to essentially have some sort of campaign strategy running in the background. You don't want to work with the Google Ads team to make things better and stronger, and you would just kind of set it and forget it. And number 3 situation is where you have a low budget, below the $100 a day to $150 a day range. I recommend you go with a simple approach that is consolidated, keep things in one approach, and just push all of your budget to that one segmentation and optimize based on the results coming in. Next strategy on the list, which is an extremely viable approach, now kind of takes a step back from Performance Max and goes a bit more on the product feed level. I call this the supplemental feed approach. In simple words, this is the approach where you duplicate that main product feed that you have. So the selection of products that you have within your product feed, duplicate this and create a brand new product feed, which is called a supplemental feed within the Google Merchant Center. And your entire purpose of this duplication is to now go in, A/B test things like your product images, your product titles, Google Merchant Center reviews, promos, etc., focusing on one specific core approach, and then A/B testing it side by side with the winning approach or the main approach which you already have running. And the way we kind of segmented out this testing approach we like to go with in terms of order of importance of what's most important versus what's least is the product images we test first, followed by the product titles, then the prices, then at the end the Google Merchant Center promos if you want to test reviews, having reviews versus not having reviews, etc. etc. An ideal option to do that with a supplemental feed as well. But the core benefits of approaching your product feed in this manner, having duplicates, is essentially you get more winning approaches identified quickly. Because in all honesty, if you have just one product feed, if you're just relying on this one main product feed, yes, there's a possibility that you can go in, duplicate one of your best selling products, for example, then A/B test something on that duplication. But that goes a bit beyond the realm of just your Google Ads strategies in its own, because now you have to go into your landing page, duplicate that landing page, then you have to do these tweaks in the back end, which can further cause problems on the organic SEO side of things, so on and so forth, which it's best to always just go directly within the merchant center, have a duplicated feed there, so that it makes it easier for you to test things side by side within that same exact campaign without any sort of overlap, without any sort of internal bidding, as I like to call it. In addition, this allows you to do proper A/B testing, because if you just duplicate a product page, a landing page on your actual website, there's a good chance that you might end up changing something specific in the back end, such as the meta tags you have for that, or specific reviews that pop up, where one landing page gets more reviews now because that's what's integrated within the backend system to generate reviews. And these sorts of problems can further make it difficult for you to understand what's truly working versus what isn't. The main goal of a supplemental feed is to only have one testing factor running at any given time, whether it be the image, title, whatever you choose, and everything else remains the exact same. And I think the third best benefit is having a supplemental feed allows you now to enter the auction, the Google Ads auction, through multiple entry points, through multiple touch points. So instead of just having one product enter the auction, now for that same keyword, you can have two products literally running into the auction without essentially overbidding, overstepping each other, because there's a good chance one might win or the other won't. Or the main goal here, the main win-win situation, is for both of these to win. And now you still have the image that's different, you still have the title that's different. So technically, in your customer's eye, it's not the same exact product, which is essentially what you want with this second strategy. But this now brings us to the third core strategy, which is what I call the brute force approach. Now, very simple approach. Essentially what this does is it's basically honing in on one specific element of your campaign that's already working and doubling, tripling down on it. For example, we have this one brand right now, which we're scaling under my agency, which, by the way, if you run a brand making $50,000 a month or more in revenue, you want to scale profitably and consistently to the next level with Google Ads, scan the QR code on the screen or click the link in the description below to directly schedule a call with me or my team, and let's see how we can potentially work together to scale your brand profitably to the next level. But with this brand specifically, we applied the brute force strategy, where what we figured out was no matter what implementation we applied, whether it was a full build approach, whether it was search campaigns, YouTube, 9 times out of 10, this brand would respond more to shopping placements only, whether it be through a Performance Max campaign, whether it be through a standard shopping campaign. So essentially, we stopped the guesswork, and every single campaign we launched here that was Performance Max or standard shopping focused, we focused only on the feed only approach. So essentially, we cut out all of the testing from majority of these campaigns and went with the feed only approach, because based on consistent experience, consistent tests, we figured out that having a high ROAS for this brand came from a feed-only campaign, whether it was through a Performance Max campaign or whether it was through a standard shopping campaign. Now, some of our original campaigns still do have these assets, but in all honesty, in the last 14 days and all last 7 days, we are now starting to find a lot better results with the feed-only approach, because these assets have now started to have some sorts of policy violations get attributed to them, even though there is no sort of religious belief or anything similar to that associated with these products, which is a big problem many brands have, especially in the gray area niches, or in niches where some of the products are approved, some of the products are not approved. And just having a brute force approach, just going after one specific thing, is ideal in situations like this, especially in also situations where your brand doesn't have a lot of high quality imagery. Now, this brand does have a lot of high quality imagery, but unfortunately, those images just don't perform as well as the feed only approach in the recent time period. And the second situation where your brand should apply a brute force tactic is when your brand is generating more revenue from shopping. If you consistently, after months and months of testing, just find out that shopping works the best, listen to the data, listen to what the algorithm is telling you, and just go after what it's responding to the best. But the bonus here, the main kind of approach and what we're seeing work the best here is running your brute force strategy, whether it's a performance max or a search campaign strategy, alongside a standard shopping campaign strategy. Ideally, especially if you're going the feed only approach, this kind of works hand in hand with performance max campaigns because this uses a completely different bidding elements and bidding style compared to a performance max campaign, even if both of these are smart bidding campaign strategies, just because a performance max has the newer elements and a standard shopping campaign is an older campaign approach that doesn't have as much of the belts and whistles as a PMax does. But again, just brute force your way with campaigns, especially if that's what is working the best for your brand. But this brings us to the second to the last strategy on the list, which is what I call the demand heavy strategy. Now, before I go into the actual results of this strategy, what you want to understand is the demand gen heavy strategy is perfect for brands with unique video creatives or with tons of scale from visual focused platforms like Meta ads, TikTok ads, or any video creative focused ad platform. And the strategy here essentially is very simple. Essentially, it's focused on demand generation through your video assets you have. So running YouTube campaigns, running demand gen campaigns like this brand does right here, and also focusing heavily on your performance max campaigns in terms of the assets to the point where majority of your budget is going towards just the assets provided in here, especially if it's high quality assets. And from all of this demand awareness, demand generation that you are kind of attributing to these campaigns, then re-establishing this in terms of your shopping campaigns, in terms of your performance max campaigns and standard shopping campaigns, and allowing all of that data to then get attributed on an accounts level. So these campaigns can then use it to further scale the keywords further, to further scale the volume, and as a result, only drive traffic from the actual keywords, from the actual audience segments, which are profitable versus what isn't profitable. And more often than not, your demand generation campaigns like the demand gen we have here, or YouTube campaigns or performance max campaigns just focused on assets, will be unprofitable. But the main goal is to feed on an account's top level that data so that it can get you a lot of, first of all, view through conversions, as we see right here, which is ultimately what that means is you're getting a lot of people coming through this campaign, watching some of those creatives, looking at those assets, but then coming through the door through another campaign separately and actually having that sale attributed to completely different campaign type. So essentially this campaign strategy is where you approach this as a whole ecosystem based approach, and it's perfect for brands again that have a lot of video creatives, that have a lot of success with Meta ads, TikTok ads on a front end level. But that brings us to the final strategy on the list, which is a simple strategy. It's known as the best sellers versus zombie products campaign approach, which this brand right here ultimately implements. Now, this strategy is the simplest of all, and it relies on the fact that you have some campaigns, some products which are already very profitable, and you have some products which are not profitable at all, which is what I call the zombie products. And it's as simple as attributing your best performing products inside a select few performance max campaigns or standard shopping, ideally focused on the smart bidding routes, but putting in a ton of budget on them, ideally 70 to 80% of your budget, especially on those select few campaigns with those products, and then applying maybe 10% to 20% of your budget on those zombie products which are not technically working as much as you would like, but you want to give them a second chance. The key here is to start your zombie products campaigns with a very high restriction. And the reason why we have it at a high restriction is because we want to revive those zombie products. We want to give them, so to speak, a second try before completely excluding them and before completely turning them off. Because the goal here is to remove their interference from the original campaigns which are performing well, because obviously you don't want a bad performing product inside these other campaigns which are generating sales, which are generating revenue, and you want to keep them only focused on what is working. Super simple approach, just focus based on what's working versus what isn't. But there you have it, 5 major strategies on Google Ads working right now across a variety of different niches which we are currently working with. But again, if you run a brand making $50,000 a month or more in revenue, you want to scale profitably and consistently to the next level with Google Ads, scan the QR code on the screen or just click the link in the description below to directly schedule a call with me, and let's see how we can make all this happen for your brand.